Hello and welcome back to Middle-earth and another video update for Wainriders. Today we are looking at the Chiefdom of Khand, one of my favorite factions, one of my most highly anticipated factions actually. I love Easterlings, and this is a great one. So we have a lot of cavalry here, a lot of horse archers, and this time around, as opposed to what we saw in the 4th Age Total War, we've got a fairly robust infantry lineup. This is in part because we're imagining that Khand in this period is a little more independent and perhaps even a little stronger than it was in the 3rd Age, or the later parts of the 3rd Age. Of course, during the War of the Ring, Khand seems to have supplied some soldiers to the armies of Mordor. You hear of the Variags of Khand at that period. Interestingly, when we read about the Wainrider period earlier in the 3rd Age, although Khand is mentioned, Variags are not. And so that led us to change how we thought about some of the units in this faction. Instead of thinking of them as sort of exiled Northmen, mercenary types, we imagined that they would be more steppe, more nomadic influenced. So really just playing up that eastern side, but also leaning in a little bit to the maybe Chinese-inspired parts of the faction. I also want to point out here that this is the first faction preview video where I'm showing off some of the banners. So this is the work of one of our newest team members, Valor, who has very kindly and very thoughtfully put a lot of work into these sort of new faction symbols, and it's great to see these very intricate, detailed banners. The units, of course, are by Weba84, models and textures, and some of these will be familiar to you if you've played 4th Age Total War, but again, there's going to be some brand new stuff here today, so let's get right into it. Now, we're starting with the front line, which is going to be your Steppe Outriders. Unlike in 4th Age, though, these guys are not a Tier 1 unit, so you won't just be able to crank out a first-level barracks and get horse archers right off the bat. These will be Tier 2, so you'll have to work for it at least a little bit more. But that makes horse archery still an important part of this faction, and these guys will perform in a fairly predictable way, I'm thinking. They're very lightly armored, but fast, numerous, so that if nothing else, and you really need them in a melee, you can swarm them into an enemy and hopefully decide the issue there. But if you need a more decisive and more well-armed arm of your horse archery lineup, then you can go with Horse Archers of Khand. So these guys are going to have lamellar armor, of course, and they're also going to have spears as a backup weapon. Smaller unit size, so you'll have to be a bit more careful with them, but on the other hand, better defense. So they're riding in now, and we're attacking the forces of Gondor, who are sending around some cavalry. We're being joined this time by the Wainriders. This is sort of a nod to the 1944 invasion of Gondor, which saw both allies of Khand and Wainriders attacking them. Some other cavalry here we're going to see in action very shortly are these Dragon Shield Riders. These are lancers, essentially cataphracts, with maces as a backup weapon, which does give them a bit of advantage against armored opponents. And so they're going to be dealing with some riders of Gondor very shortly. Here they go charging towards these Princes of Rovanion, which we should take a look at as well, because I don't think we've seen this faction in any of these previews just yet. Or this unit, rather. So we thought of Gondor as not necessarily having a ton of its native cavalry. So rather than give them that, we went with some Rovanian, some Northmen inspired cavalry. And we do know that the Northmen made up a substantial portion of Gondor during this period and well before. So I really like the look of these guys. They're getting sandwiched not only by the Dragon Shield Riders, but by a new infantry unit for Khand, Warriors of Khand. So these are halberd types, very heavily armored, good morale, very effective against cavalry, and even against just any other infantry types. But they're going to in turn get charged by another unit of Princes of Rovanion, and so we're going to have to get some help here from our other units. Speaking of some of those others, some basic ones, we've got some Nomadic Axemen. These are your Tier 2 infantry, sort of your more straightforward infantry types, and they're going to do fairly well against these Swordsmen of Gondor, who are very outnumbered compared to them. But we're being supported by these Iron Tower Warriors just now. So these are very elite. We're imagining these as kind of a Sauronian unit. The Iron Tower is perhaps a reference to Sauron's mysterious fortress somewhere in the east that is always off map and never really discussed in detail, but It's mentioned in one of the references, I think, in the Silmarillion, that he surrounded his abode with fire and people worship him as a god. This is, at some point during the Second or Third Age. And so we imagine that legends would grow up among the Eastern people about this Lord of the Earth, this mysterious character. And some of them would be inspired to pay service in some way. So Khand, although we don't picture them as being under Sauron's thumb by any means, we do want there to be the possibility for the player potentially to sort of throw in and maybe go all in on the cultic stuff and get that kind of a reward for it. In the back there, we've got some archer types. So this is some infantry archers of Khand with spears as well as their bows, making them a pretty good option against cavalry in case they get rushed. Right behind them, it's always good to have some supporting spearmen, and these are your Tier 1 spears, which makes them decent garrison or militia fighters, but they can also be useful against light cav, although I wouldn't send them against those princes of Rivanion we saw earlier. You're also going to still have some basic steppe archers, very similar to the steppe outriders that we saw on horseback, but these are probably a more garrison-appropriate unit, although they can be certainly effective in an open battle like this. And another unit that I don't think we saw was this, the nomadic riders. So this is your lancer, your sort of low-tier lancer cav. These are actually Tier 1. So instead of having them at Tier 2 or 3, you're going to get some very, very effective light cavalry fairly early as Khand. Also seeing another unit of good infantry here, spearmen of Khand. This is maybe not the best matchup for them, of course, because we're fighting swordsmen, but this is going to be a unit of the line, as it were. So you're going to be able to form a lot of options with this faction, going from the all-horse archer type army or all cavalry with different arms of cavalry to almost entirely infantry, depending on how you play it. And I think that versatility is going to make Khand a very interesting option this time around. They're going to be potentially allies, potentially foes with the Wainriders to their north. They're also going to have to contend with the tribes of the Harad to the west. And then there may be other factions they run into. Maybe the Lordship of Umbar, Gondor certainly, and maybe other factions on other parts of the map. So I hope this was an interesting look at the Chiefdom of Khand. Stay tuned to the channel for other previews of the factions as we continue development. Also check out our 4th Age Total War forums, where you can also discuss Wainriders at TotalWarCenter.net, and our Discord for more discussion on the mod or other related things. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I'll check you out in the next one. Bye-bye.